Hello, space junkies, and welcome to What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. This is episode 102, and I am your friendly host, Scott Botman, joined once again here in the new year of our Lord 2023 by my original co host on this podcast, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going?
Happy New Year to you,
Happy
Scott.
New
Happy New
Year!
Year to the listeners and the space junkies out there. Hope Santa or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah star, all the stuff was good for you for the holidays. And hopefully you're still on your New Year's resolutions if you decide to do any. If not, that's okay. You can come listen to us talk about Star Wars and forget all about that and have a good time because I'm super excited because I think 2023 is really going to be a fantastic year for Star Wars. And I mean, we're going to get into it with Bad Batch season 2 here in a little bit, but really looking forward to all the great stuff we're going to get later this year.
And my New Year's resolution was to talk about Star Wars more on a podcast. So, boom.
Are you
I
doing
mean,
two podcasts now?
I'm and it also was to talk more Star Wars with my original Wookiee co-pilot, our very own Dave Filcloni, the man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Mr. Nathan Miracle. Nathan,
Hello, hello, hello.
Happy New Year and welcome aboard the Drunken Gungan for 2023.
Happy New Year to you as well. You know, I think 2023 is going to be a terrible year for Star Wars. There's just nothing coming out. Wait, no, sorry, that was 1993. No, this year is going to be jam-packed with Star
Hey,
Wars.
some stuff happened for Star Wars in 1993, but yeah, not nearly as much as is going to happen this year.
Yeah, we're going to be very busy here on the Drunken Gungan, reacting to things pretty much every week, like
Yeah,
almost the
some
whole
weeks we
year.
might have to double up. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to be a whirlwind. And speaking of a whirlwind, we had the first two episodes of Star Wars: The Bad Batch season 2 premiere this past week, and I really enjoyed it, guys. I guess overall first impressions before we jump into our 5 questions about the show. It was fun to see the Clone Force 99 crew back, and when we started out on that beach planet with those crabs, we saw that crab battle to a certain extent in the trailer, but it was fun to get to see it all interconnected. Although I did joke with Mita when I hit play and that popped up, and I said, I think I accidentally started Moana again. My bad.
That is the first thing. I watched it with my girlfriend Andrea. That's the first thing she said when she saw it was, "Oh, we're watching Moana." Like,
What's
no,
with this giant
no.
crabs and their hoarding of treasure?
Yeah, because I mean that was the same from Moana as well. These
Yeah,
crabs were all about "Give me that box," and Clone Force 99 was stealing it, and then you had the shiny guy in Moana who was all about "Give me the cool stuff."
Shiny.
Yeah,
which in my opinion was the best part of Moana. Not that the rest
it
of it was
was
bad or anything, but
it
that
was
was
pretty
my
good.
favorite song.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, what did you guys think as your overall first impression of the episode? Doesn't have to necessarily be the opening scene, but Derek, how did you feel about the beginning of the episode?
Uh, kind of the same formula we had in season 1. Obviously, it was kind of a cold opening, right? In a sense, right? Because we didn't get like anything; they were just on a mission already. Kind of feels like this was a side quest, though, right? It
Yes.
didn't feel like a part of the main quest or part of the main storyline objective. Obviously, it resulted in a little bit later on, but this first portion of it was definitely a side quest. But it was overall okay. Wasn't anything to write home about, in my opinion. There was some good parts. There was a couple of lulls. I found myself, as some people said, looking down at my phone a couple of times, right? And didn't pique my interest. I mean, obviously, it's really hard when you're following something like Andor,
Yeah.
which, to be fair, I think had this started right after and we didn't have a little bit longer break like we did with Andor, it might have been a little bit better for me, but because of the lull so much, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm ready to get back into Star Wars, but it wasn't enough to be like, oh, okay, I got to really pay attention. It was lighthearted, which was good, but it wasn't anything that I felt like, oh, okay, I need to really focus on this. At least these first couple of episodes. I mean, a little bit later to episode 2, As we got a little bit more going into it back with the Empire, but not so much in the first I would say 35 minutes, 40 minutes of the overall hour or whatever we got of the 2 episodes.
Yeah. Nathan, initial impressions?
Well, I do agree with Derek that this is a show where you don't necessarily have to pay quite as close attention as you do with Andor, and I think that's on purpose. That's the style of the show, so I'm not going to knock the show for that. That's just part of what this show is. It's not going to be as deep or dark and gritty as Andor is. So I'm very excited to have D. Bradley Baker back as the Bad Batch.
Everyone.
Just
That's
the
everyone.
whole
Yeah.
batch.
Yeah.
Everyone except for Omega. So
And
the
the
first
Imperial guy at the end that had like a 30-second snippet.
the Rampart, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Just even most of the bad guys were clones in this. So that first bit with the crabs, that was obviously a side quest, but it did a little bit to establish, this is what's been going on since season 1. Omega's gotten a little bit older. Her hair's grown out a little bit. She's studying up on these technical manuals, which that comes back into play later on. But then it also shows us that, okay, the Bad Batch has been running these missions and they're the top team now. So they've been doing this for a little while and they kind of know what they're doing. So it's more of an establishing thing. So kind of a side quest, but yeah, it establishes some stuff. I think it's too early to tell whether the rest of it going to Dooku's castle and all that is going to play into some larger arc. It might, or it might be a standalone thing. It's hard to tell at this point.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed seeing the Bad Batch back in action, and look forward to seeing the rest of the season.
Yeah, for me, you know what? I'm going to wait and save this for the questions here because you were just talking about Dooku's castle, and I thought that was a cool little tidbit there. That even the Empire is going to get that stuff because, gee, I wonder why there's a certain high-ranking Imperial who knows that Dooku has a bunch of money at his castle. I can't figure out how that happened. Anyway. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the 5 questions. And Derek, we'll kick it off with you.
Did you have anything of the overarching season or the 2 episodes so far?
Oh, that was what I said about the starting with the Moana joke was pretty much my whole interpretation there. But yeah, no, I had a great time with it. And I think that it was a good atmosphere for a Star Wars adventure show. This is very much adventures in the Star Wars galaxy. So certainly not as dark and gritty as Andor, but not even as high stakes as The Mandalorian. Honestly, at no point did I fear for the Bad Batch lives or even Omega's. I figured they were going to be okay. Now, the ancillary characters that we'll probably talk about a little bit in a few minutes here. A couple of them I thought might bite it, and in fact, one of them did, or at least we think they did. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the 5 questions. Derek, number 1, what did you like most about this episode? And for purposes of our discussion on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be treating Spoils of War and Ruins of War as though they were one big long episode, because they were pretty much a 2-part story.
Okay, so it's kind of 2 things. So the first one is, and Nathan touched a little bit about it. I do like Omega's look. I think she did look a little bit older for a cartoon. Obviously, she is not a normal clone in the sense where I don't think she's going to age fast, right? She's going to age as a normal person. But she did come across like, yeah, there might be like a year or 6 months, right? And I do like her look. She got rid of that gem thing or whatever that was over her head and all that. And she looked a little bit more like, okay, she's been, roughing it with them for a little while, right? She's gotten a little bit more practice on some things. But my favorite part, and this will be a shout out to our good friend Kevin Reitzel, because he didn't like this first part of the episode. His least favorite was that the Bad Batch were using everything on stun pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And they were talking about that. But honestly, which I think, like I said, we'll talk about this and save for a little bit later on question 5 here, and possibly why. They're still doing it on stun. But my favorite part, it really got me to chuckle pretty out loud, was when in episode 2 when they're on tech, Omega and Echo are on there, and they're going through the whole, trying to escape the stormtroopers or clone troopers, who are the troopers at this point, the baddies, and they stun the first batch, and then they kind of go off, and then they have to come back through where they left, and the one trooper is like rubbing his head like he just woke up, and they stun the poor guy again. And I laughed so hard. It just made me laugh, and I was like,
Poor
okay,
guy.
that's my favorite part. So that one right there.
He's the dude who got stunned twice.
He's gonna
It's
have a really bad headache, right?
He
when
is,
wakes
yeah.
up.
It's like you can't do that. You're going to give him like brain cancer or something. I always think about Men in Black when they
Yeah.
use the neuralizer on
Too
somebody
many
multiple times.
Did you ever use that on me? No.
No,
No, I ain't playing, man. You
Hey,
ever
I
use
play
that
with
on
you.
me?
Have you ever flashy thinged me? Anyway, yeah, that good stuff, Derek. Yeah, that was an excellent gag with the recurring stun bolt there. I also stun bolt wise, I also liked the one in I think it was in the second episode where no, it was in the first episode. The first time they're hiding in the cargo container at Dooku's castle, and that one clone trooper's walking by, and he just turns and looks in like the doorway, and Wrecker is right there, and he stuns him right in the face, so that his face goes wham, and he lands on the platform, like just his head, and he's just sitting there like this, and Wrecker grabs him and pulls him into the thing, and Tech is like, Wrecker, he goes, what? I did it quietly. They're gonna miss that guy when he doesn't report in. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, just seeing that trooper go was so great, because he couldn't fall all the way down. He was like suspended there. Anyway, okay, Nathan, what was your favorite thing about this episode? And then I'll go with my actual favorite thing, not stun schematics or
Stun galore.
bandits.
Well, I mean, I really like the stuns too, because I think it makes a lot of sense for the Bad Batch to be stunning clones instead of killing them. They do see the clones as their brethren, and they see them as victims of the Empire more than they do, actual supporters of the Empire. So I actually noticed that they were doing the stunning and really liked that bit too. But outside of the stunning, I think the thing I liked best was how the beginning of the first episode showed us this is what's been happening. It caught us up on whatever the time gap was without having to have scrolling text that said, over the past 6 months, the Bad Batch has done X, Y, Z.
But I
So
would have
it-
liked that too, though. That would have been fine. It would have been classic Star Wars.
If we had gotten the voiceover, like
Yeah.
the newscast, like we did in the original Clone Wars cartoons, that would have been cool. But still, I like it when shows can show us things and have us understand, okay, this is what happened, without having to spoon feed. Okay, now remember, they went on a whole bunch of missions.
They increased their XP, right? So
Yes,
Right,
they
yes,
level up. Yeah. Okay, well, for me, my favorite thing was actually guest star Hector Elizondo as Romar, the old man who was the survivor on Sereno, Count Dooku's planet of Sereno. I love seeing him interact with the clones and just get some of the best burns against our heroes, because Tech is in Romar's hut, and he's talking to him about the little computer that Romar wants him to repair, a Type 2 data capsule.
A Model 2 data module.
Model 2
Yeah.
data module. Thank you. And he basically says, what Tech is like, why do you want this fixed? And he's like, it's got stuff from my society from before we became separatists, but you probably
Oh, a separatist archive.
yeah. And he's like, actually, it's from before we became separatists, because we had a whole planet.
we were people before.
Yeah, we were a whole
separatists.
people before that, but that probably doesn't
Right.
mean anything to you.
I never
And-
thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I really liked about that is Tech and the rest of the clones outside of Omega are younger than the war.
Yeah.
They didn't exist until they were created, in the past few years. Omega is actually the oldest person on their team
Yes.
by quite a bit.
Yeah.
She's the older sister, so
Anyway, yes, of course, Hector kills it as the voice actor and actor in
Yeah.
general. And so when the first line out of his mouth, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's that guy!" And then I
I thought it was Jimmy Smits at first.
But they have a similar accent.
They do.
So
They
yeah.
do. So at first I was like, is that Jimmy? I was like, I guess we're not gonna get a Bale cameo.
Yeah. But no, in
Hey.
fact, it was.
You know that one voice actor can voice act for multiple people, perhaps millions at once.
Yeah. And of course, we've already got voice actor Mark Hamill in other Star Wars movies, not being Luke Skywalker. So Hamill
Yeah, I know.
actually played a voice in The Last Jedi, at which the same time he was playing as Luke. So
Yeah.
But no, it's Hector Alonso or Alonso. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. And younger listeners would know him as Mr. Azate from Last Man Standing with Tim Allen. Great show, hilarious role. But of course, he probably is most famous as the dude who was the hotel maitre d' in Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. So yeah, and he does a great job in all of those roles. And yeah, I loved him basically schooling Tech on the whole thing of you got to stop reducing people to such binary things, which is actually a macrocosm, if you will, or microcosm for the Clone Force 99 group dealing with living in the galaxy after the war is over and when essentially a whole new war has begun of the guerrilla war against the Empire. Okay, so question number 2. What did you dislike most about this episode? I'm going to go first because mine's a little goofy, and maybe I missed it and y'all can help me out. But what was in the box that they stole from the crabs? We didn't find that out yet, did we? Or we were just never going to? Whatever it was, Fee wanted it, the Wanda Sykes character. Did I miss it? Because I mean, the thing I dislike the most is that we didn't find out what they were getting from the crabs.
I do believe it was an egg MacGuffin.
An egg MacGuffin. It is a crate of unobtainium.
Yep.
Yeah, it is the Maltese Falcon module.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it did not matter to the plot, so they didn't bother telling us.
Yeah, see, that bugs me. I want it at least to be a nod to it was a pile of gold, or it was a bunch of credits, or it was the best crab legs you'll ever taste. Something.
Delicious.
Yeah, but
not that I actually like crab legs.
Yeah, you don't. That was just a slight nitpick, I know, but it bugged me because it's left the hole open, and yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll find out later. Like with the things they were making at the prison in Andor, we finally
all
found
part
out
of the Death
what
Star.
those were. Yeah. Nathan, what did you dislike the most about this episode?
I think the thing I dislike the most is more of a macro thing, and that is it's a bit formulaic.
Mhm.
The Bad Batch goes on a mission, something goes awry, they have to get out of whatever scrape they've gotten themselves in, and then they do, and that's it. We've seen that a few times already with this show. And if they just keep doing that over and over again, it'll get a little boring.
So back when Star Wars Rebels was brand new, I was listening to a few other reviews of that show, and there was an episode of Rebels where Darth Vader himself was there, and he was fighting Kanan and Ezra and the crew. And
yeah, when he comes down right in the top of his TIE fighter. I mean, well, come on, it's the most bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's
you're not Anakin Skywalker coming down.
I think you're thinking of two different scenes, though, Scott.
Yes,
I think you're
what
thinking.
I'm thinking of is when they this is like Ahsoka wasn't involved in the story.
Oh,
I'm
you're
thinking
talking
of.
season 1.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
at the end of
yes,
season
yes,
1,
yes.
if I recall
Getting
correctly.
there, right? And people were like, "Oh, this is so cool to see Darth Vader and the Emperor again in Star Wars, yada yada yada." Because this was before The Force Awakens came out, but we knew already that The Force Awakens was whatever the next Star Wars movie was going to be.
It was before Rogue One, obviously, too, where we got the really cool ending for.
We
Vader.
knew that The Force Awakens was going to be set after Return of the Jedi. So we knew that Darth Vader wouldn't be around per se because he's dead, right? And so people were so excited to see Vader again. And they were like, this was great. Some people were like, we want Darth Vader to be the bad guy for the Rebels the whole time. And other people were like, I don't know. It would really be bad because we know the Rebels aren't going to beat him. but watching him lose to Scooby-Doo and the gang each week would be very annoying. And like each week, Ezra and the gang find some way to slip through his clutches, and Vader's left standing there. I'll get you next time, rebels. Next time, right?
And then you pull off his mask, and it turns out he was Old Man Jenkins the whole time.
Yeah,
Wait,
right.
wait, no.
So he had a
no.
Darth Vader mask under a Darth Vader mask.
Yes.
That's not Darth Vader. It's Darth Vader.
That's not Darth Vader. It's Anakin Skywalker. Oh, wait a minute. Anyway, so I was like in the camp of no, we don't want Vader to be the bad guy every episode or even every season because it's kind of going to be like, of course they're not going to kill him or hurt him, but also there's total suspension of disbelief that Vader wouldn't just crush them all immediately, right? And so I was glad that they had someone like the Grand Inquisitor, then later the Seventh Sister, and so on and so forth. So yes, Nathan, you're very much correct. I don't want the Bad Batch to turn into, I think Kevin said, A-Team in space. Like every week the A-Team shows up to help solve some problem. They get into a jam and they come up with some gear to, bust their way out of it.
They kind of are the A-Team in space.
Yes, they kind of are.
Was the 99 team?
Yes.
Right.
Team 99. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, Derek, what did you dislike the most?
So it kind of mirrors with Nathan a little bit, but it's really and I'm okay with it being that every so often, right? Like you get the side quest type deal stuff, right? And we do that, right? And it all folds into the main objective or the main overarching story, right? And you're going to have that where they pull. But I agree with you. Not every week to week. Let's hopefully have this, right? But the one thing I disliked was the whole season 1 again, where Omega is upset because somebody said something and she takes it to heart. And it's like, how long does she need to be where she feels the Bad Batch doesn't accept her? Like, do we can't we just move on? Like, she's part of the team. She's at this point replaced Hunter, or not Hunter, Crosshairs.
Yeah.
So cool. Okay, so let's just move along. We don't need this. Like, it's drama that's really not even drama, because it's like, okay, we're all gonna hug and come along and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, while we're getting shot at, right? Like, I don't need that, right? We had that in season 1, which I totally get, and that's where I was like, okay, she's a little bit older, but then yet we still have the same thing where she's not feeling accepted by her brothers because because as usual, Wrecker says something, right, and he's just a bumbling idiot, and she always takes it to heart whatever he says, and it's like, well, don't listen to Wrecker because he can't make complete sentences. So
right, yes.
So you have no idea what he even means by it, right? Which is, again, he didn't mean it by that way, and it's like, okay. So really, that's it. So it's to echo what Nathan says, if it's a repetitive formula, it's going to be a long season 2.
Yeah, and drama that stems from our characters just don't have a conversation with each other. That's not good drama.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. This isn't Andor. We don't have an hour for each episode to really go into that, right? It's 23 minutes because it's built in for commercials. Let's go on. So, and I guess really probably the other thing and I'm not saying it won't happen, but I was surprised that, Crosshairs wasn't even in it. Like, did he just not care anymore about the Bad Batch? Did they dispose of him because he couldn't get rid of the Bad Batch? Like, they reported the Bad Batch like
me for the last time.
Well, that's it. It's like, everybody was the Bad Batch is dead. Well, no, they're not. I mean, they wear their same armor, except it's a little bit different paint job, which was cool looking, but it's literally the same 5 clones running around with one of them's a kid clone that doesn't wear any getup, right? She's fully exposed. Like,
they're not exactly in disguise.
Yeah. So it's like, well, Bad Batch 99 was disposed of, but yet, 1,000 stormtroopers just all saw him, right? Like, and it's like, you go from one thing to the next. It's like, they have the technology. Like, I don't get this. Like, this Crosshair should have been here. And like, that would have been a great way to kick off the season, because it's like, okay, he's still pursuing them, right? He's still upset, but now we got this other guy that's it's just like, okay.
Which I would have been fine with, because Rampart was in season 1, so he's a returning character. I would have been fine with Crosshair showing up with Rampart. That would have made perfect sense, because then he would have gotten the news that they're there. I can understand him thinking they're dead for a little while, but yeah, he's bound to show up at some point. It was a little conspicuous that he was just not there at
And
all.
not to get too meta, but we do know that Crosshair's in this season because we saw him in the trailer.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but like I would have preferred Crosshairs to be the main villain at this point, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well, and he still could be for this season, but if he is, you're right that it's weird that he didn't even like get some note and go, "Oh my gosh, they're alive! I didn't know."
yeah, I forgot to get out of bed this morning. My alarm didn't go off.
I thought I had a Google alert set for any appearance of Clone Force 99. Why did this thing work? Anyway. Okay, so question number 3. What connections did you draw between this episode and the larger Star Wars galaxy? Nathan.
All right. Well, the big obvious one is we're at Dooku's castle,
Yeah.
which we've been to before, and we've been specifically to the room that has the thing in the floor that
We've
Dooku
been
escaped
to the
with.
room where it happened.
Yes. So as soon as I saw that room, I knew, okay, they're going to open up that chute, and that's how they're going to escape. Like you don't put them in that room and not have that mechanism
It's Chekhov's
show up.
chute.
So that was a big one. And then Dooku having tons of money was something that hasn't quite directly been addressed, but he is a count, so it makes sense that he would have a vast personal wealth. And there have been some stories in the Clone Wars about how the Separatists don't really need as much funding as the Republic does. They're getting better deals from the Intergalactic Bank, which makes no sense, by the way, because that name would imply that there are other galaxies that they're banking with. But
No. You could call yourself the Intergalactic Bank, even though you're just in that bank, that galaxy. Just the way that we have the Miss Universe pageant here on Earth. It's marketing.
Well, it should be the intragalactic.
Yeah, it should be, but it's not because intergalactic sounds cooler.
Sounds better. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's some other connections, but the big ones are definitely Count Dooku.
Yeah. Derek, what you got for connections?
Captain Wilco.
Yeah.
So that at this point lasted one whole half an episode. Or at least we think, right?
Yeah, there was the classic, I got shot and I should be dead, but I fell over the side of a cliff, and this is Star Wars.
Yes.
So,
And he didn't make the classic, right?
That's true.
So he
I have to admit, I was very disappointed not to get a Wilhelm scream
yes,
in that
sad.
particular
Like,
shot.
he's a clone. Aren't they all supposed to sound like that? Yeah.
So that was, I'm like, so that means he wasn't. He's probably sitting there, like, pulling all his old Gandalf and the Balrog, right? And he's got to figure out how to, like, pull out his knife and, like, somehow get into the rock and slow himself down before he falls and hits the end. So,
And then he comes back with like a cybernetic eye that he got on the black market. You thought I was dead, Rampart.
And now he's going to join Bad Batch, right?
Yes, he's going to be part of Clone Force 99 to get revenge on Rampart.
Well, they're called Clone Force 99 because eventually there's going to be 99 of them, right?
I don't think. I mean, yes, obviously.
Yes.
Yes, obviously. All right, my big connection. Nathan was so close to stealing my thunder, but he didn't. So thank you. Once again, Count Dooku connection. But for me, it was specifically Count Dooku's personal wealth, because prior to this episode, like Nathan said, there was the oblique references to, oh, he's a count, he must be rich. But back in 2015 or maybe 2014, Landry Q. Walker wrote a book in the Tales from a Galaxy Far, Far Away Aliens series of books for the Journey to Star Wars, The Force Awakens. It was a paperback novel called The Crimson Corsair and the Lost Treasure of Count Dooku, which, frankly, is an epic title, even if it had nothing to do with Star Wars. But it was a reference to a story about Captain Itano, the red-armored pirate that Finn almost joins his crew at Maz Kanata's castle in Star Wars The Force Awakens. This is a tale of him before he met up with Finn at the castle there. And he and his space pirate crew go after supposedly this lost ship that was left over from the end of the Clone Wars, even all the way back or all the way out into the Force Awakens era. That was supposedly a shipment of gold, money, jewels, credits, etc., for Count Dooku's war chest in the Clone Wars. And so um, I'm wondering if the people who wrote the script for this episode of The Bad Batch got a little inspiration from that idea of, gosh, Count Dooku must have had plenty of money and it was all hidden away. And in this case, in the story with the Crimson Corsair, it's about a ship that was delivering money but never made it to its destination and was presumably lost in hyperspace, which is an interesting theory or interesting story to think about in the aftermath of Andor as a series, because their whole thing was a ship full of money. So there you go.
Now, did they find the ship in that book?
Oh gosh, this is 2015, bro. You're gonna ask me to remember. I think that they didn't. I think that it turned out that it was a wild goose chase, a wild tri-tip chase.
All right. Well, here's my crazy theory. Then they said they only got 85% of the treasure recovered. I'm thinking that since they didn't find that ship, the stories came from this one ship where all the cargo, fell off the back.
That's cool. I like that idea. Or alternatively, we know at the end of Ruins of War, Captain Wilco tells Rampart that they've recovered about 85% of it, but he won't rest until he gets every last penny, essentially. And maybe one of the
he'll rest.
Oh yeah, he's gonna rest at the bottom of that
Peace.
ravine. Anyway, that this ship that the Crimson Corsair and his men are chasing down, is another chunk of it that the Empire never recovered. Like, that's the missing 15%. That's my new personal headcanon, and I'm going with it until I can remember how that book ends. Anyway, but yes, so there's my big connection to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy, and I will not be spending the next few minutes Googling up the answer to what happens to it while Derek answers question number 4. What did you think of Fee Genoa, the character voiced by Wanda Sykes?
It's Wanda Sykes playing herself.
It kind of was. It kind of was. It felt a lot like that.
So, she's going to be a little bit more than, Sid. Like, I feel like she's like, Sid is like a team lead or like a late third shift supervisor. And she's actually the, assistant manager, right? And she's the one who has to come in and be like, okay, what's going on here? Whether or not it's good or not, right? I don't know, but it feels like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, you've paid your extra dues, right? You've been making extra money. What's going on? Oh, I got these, ex troopers. Oh, let me find out about them, right? Let me see if we can make this, maybe there's more troopers out there that we can, start doing underground, side
Mission.
quests for.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes, side quests.
So she's the person who has that shirt that looks like it says assistant manager, but then there's that little post-it that says to the there's assistant.
Yeah, she's not really in charge
manager.
of anything, right? So
Yeah.
like, I feel like it would have been better if she was also Trandoshan, because then I'd be like, oh, okay, she's like, they're like sisters or something. Like, that would have been a little bit more funny, right? I mean, obviously seeing Rhea Perlman again, keep doing the voice, was good and all that stuff, but it was too short to get anything out of it, right? So we'll see. I mean, was this just kind of like she just did all of her lines in, half a day type deal, and she's got a few things when they come back every so often, or is she actually someone who's going to help them, do something, right? So, we'll see.
Yeah. So my response to this question is pretty much the exact same as yours. It's, she's Wanda Sykes. That's a very distinctive voice, which is both a good thing and a bad thing for a voice actor. I couldn't help but hear not Fee, but Wanda. So wasn't thrilled about that part, but I do think she could be an interesting character. I think you're exactly right that she is most likely like one step up in the organization, whatever this organization is.
Yeah, what this loosely conglomerated gangsters, basically.
Yeah. So she's come in to say, oh yeah, you've got this top team. I keep hearing about them. So, well, I've got this big mission. I obviously want our top team on it. So when they come through, we'll be great because there's no way they won't come back with a chest full of gems, right? Right?
Right? Nudge,
Uh,
nudge, wink, wink.
yeah. All right. Well, Scott, what did you think of Fee?
I thought she was cool. I liked that she almost sort of flirted with Tech, and he, in his most Sheldon Cooper-esque way, completely oblivious to that possibility, and began explaining the clone's phenotype and its effect on eye color. At
Yeah,
which point,
when she called him brown eyes, my first thought was, don't they all have brown eyes? And so was his.
yes, that was exactly his thought, and he began to explain it to her in such a way as to make her eyes glaze over in boredom midway through that sentence. And so she just sort of said, all right, that's enough, and then starts ordering Wrecker around to tote the crate of unknown MacGuffins, MacGuffins. And so, yeah, I think she's going to be good comic relief, but she's also going to be. I think we'll get a scene somewhere in this season where she is having to help them blast their way out of trouble, and she's tough as nails. She really gave me a Maz Kanata vibe almost.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Which I suppose at this point she would predate Maz Kanata, but maybe not in the grand scheme of things, because Maz is apparently really, 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 really.
Yeah,
really
I was going to say, I think Maz is technically older.
Yeah.
Which means we could theoretically see Maz and Takodana at some point in.
Now that would be cool. Because when we saw Maz's castle on Takodana, wasn't there a few flags from the Clone Wars era hanging around at the flag?
I think there were
Probably.
flags from even before the Clone Wars.
Oh yeah, definitely they were before
Yeah,
that.
those
but I
Grand
meant
Republic
also-
ones, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's my theory about Fijania. See, so I can't remember. I was trying to Google their names as we've been talking about it. The two black sisters from Clone Wars season 7.
Martez, the Martez sisters, right?
Yeah.
I think that's their
That's right.
mother.
Oh, you think she's their mom?
Fee's their mother.
Huh.
Oh,
Could be. Could be.
so they do have a different last name, but I mean that's not,
Well, that's that
that could be a cover
they
name
could take off
easily.
take off that, or they could take their father's name, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah,
so because that's why they're on Coruscant and she's not, right? So, but
that would imply that they thought their mom died, but she somehow escaped.
Yeah. Which would make
Because-
sense for someone of Fee's type of reputation.
Right. Yeah, because they do tell Ahsoka that both of their parents were killed. But it wouldn't be the first time that we thought someone was dead and somehow they returned.
Yes. Or even more to the point, it wouldn't be the first time a underworld type faked their own death.
yeah. So, yeah, I feel like typical, like she's probably either she faked her death because she needed to escape because she was in bad debt of some sort, right? Or she faked her death in a sense to basically say, okay, leave my kids alone. They don't need to know about it, but I'll come work for you as, whoever the underbelly person she's working for. So, but this is how we'll get the sisters to be a recurring character. They'll show up.
Yeah,
Because they did in season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Okay, time for question number 5. I'll go first here. Any thoughts on an overarching theme or story for this season? I think that it's going to be, I think they've telegraphed it a little bit. It's going to be about Clone Force 99 and Rex trying to help as many clones as they can to escape from under the control of the Empire, and then possibly even help fight against the Empire. First of all, because that's a compelling story and it makes a lot of sense logically because they know how the clones are being controlled because they've all had their chips removed. And secondly, it's a really good overarching theme because it makes it to where Palpatine was sort of the instrument, he facilitated the instrument of his own demise, because if the clones are a huge part of the rebellion making military strides against the Empire, but the clones only exist because of Palpatine's, machinations, it's a great hoisted on your own petard kind of storyline, which we know that Star Wars loves to do with the dark side, right? They're gonna have their overreach, and it's gonna come back to haunt them. Or in this case, their overconfidence is their weakness, and so Palpatine is having to deal with the leftover clones in ways that he wasn't necessarily intending to do. Now, I don't know how successful they're going to be at getting a large number of clones to help fight the Empire, but even if they get like one or two of the caliber of Rex or the rest of Clone Force 99, that's a huge force multiplier as a commando group of elite operatives that help the rebellion against the Empire. Nathan, what do you think for an overarching theme or story for the main season 2?
All right. Well, I've got a few ideas here. One is we noticed that they didn't actually get any of Dooku's treasure in these 2 episodes. So I think Fee is going to have them under her thumb. In these episodes, they said, well, we've already got our freedom. And Sid said, well, it's cute that you think that, but
Yeah,
but no, you don't. So I think they'll be even more enthralled to Fee and Sid at this point. But I think you're absolutely right that there's going to be a storyline about them trying to release the clones from the sway of the Empire. And I think the whole "we stun clones" is going to come into play with that, because I think somebody like Commander Cody is going to realize at some point, they're not killing us, and they're going to have this Mitchell and Webb moment of, are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies? Yeah.
I've noticed we've got skulls on our helmets. So I think that's going to play a part. Also, if you look at the episode titles, it has been pointed out that episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7 start with F, E, T, and T. So that would spell out Fett. I don't know if that's coincidence or if there's something to that. But there could be something with Boba at that point. He'd still be, probably teenager-ish, younger teen. So he might show up at some point. But I think the big thing is going to be the clones and getting them, especially in the last couple episodes, which are named The Summit and Plan 99. They're going to plan to kind of liberate the clones, possibly through using the chips against the Empire. Execute Order 99. Derek.
Well, to echo Order 99, but this is how Palp gets rid of all the clones, right? So all the clones will come together. They'll figure out a way to mass signal it, right? And to deactivate the chip. And they'll be like, hooray! And then it'll be Order 99, where now this time the human stormtroopers all execute them. Or they'll all make one mass battle and it'll be a giant bomb and he'll nuke them, right? And it'll just obliterate the planet. Or maybe we'll get a test of the Death Star super laser. Right?
Super secret, super laser test, or and not the Death Star itself, but just the gun, like strapped to the bottom of the giant super star destroyer or whatever.
Yeah, blowing up the whole planet that they're on, right? So that's where I feel like, and again, it'll be the perfect, cleaning up his evidence by destroying it, right? So, and no one will know that, it was Palp the whole time. So that's where I feel like that's their whole mission this season is to, get what they're try to save as many as they can. And then in the end, it's fruitless because, they all have to die. And again, that'll explain how there's not as many clones anymore, right? Because you would think not to say that the Empire wouldn't just let them all die in the battles with the rebellion and stuff like that, but like we don't see them really at all other than just an occasional one-off here and there in Rebels and in Andor and in all that stuff. So
we've seen more Jedi survivors from the time frame of Kenobi on than we have clone survivors. And that's even if you pretend that the Nick Saint guy on Endor is Rex.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's going to be how they're going to. Basically, this is how they're going to wipe out all the clones. This is how many seasons we get of it. So,
yeah, and then you leave just enough survivors who weren't on the planet to where.
yeah,
if you
I mean,
want
obviously
to-
Rex has to survive, right? We have
Rex,
a couple,
Regger,
you know,
Wolf.
we might, yeah. You might get Hunter somewhat survives, or Crosshair might survive in the form of what we talked about as a dark trooper. But we'll see. So,
yeah, I think Crosshair. Either he's going to go full Empire or he's going to be redeemed. There's like no two.
yeah.
He's not going to be middle of the road.
Well, I think he'll be redeemed, but in the end, his punishment for his sins is going to be he's going to be made into a dark trooper, and that'll be how it carries on, right? And that's how the thing ends. So we'll have some new baddies, you know, that they'll be able to do in a cartoon show, right? Because at this point, Filoni's got to have his cartoon. So how is he going to continue his cartoon saga?
So the Bad Batch themselves can survive while most of the other clones get blown up, and then Bad Batch season whatever, because that could take a couple of seasons.
Well, not even that. I think most of them can pass. Like I said, yeah, you could have. Well, I mean, not this season, right? I think that's the overarching story, right? I think this season it could be, or it could be several seasons that we get of this overarching theme. But yeah,
of course, we don't know how many seasons we're going to get.
Yeah.
So I just hope that whatever season is the last season, they know that going in.
Yeah,
because
so
what
they
I
can
don't
plan ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, what I don't want is a cliffhanger of, and join us next season for cancellation.
Right. Yes. And join us next season when we don't get renewed for the streaming. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, while you guys were pontificating, I did a quick scan of a summary that I found of the Crimson Corsair and the Lost Treasure of Count Dooku. It is so much cooler than I could have possibly thought. I am not going to spoil it for you, Nathan. I'm going to buy you that book so that you can read it because, oh my gosh.
Well, my birthday is coming up, so.
Are we buying him a book, or are we actually getting him the Audible?
Oh, that's a good. I wonder if there is an Audible for this.
If you've got the Audible, that's probably better.
I'm going to see if I can find that. Yeah. Because believe me, once you find out what I guess, slight spoiler, the Crimson Corsair and his crew do find that ship and they find the treasure, but treasure.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Anyway. Okay.
And with Audible, I can have that playing in the background while I'm working. I can't stop and turn and read a book while I'm working.
Yes.
It's not the same.
Well, cool. Okay, yes. So, well, anyway, if any of that stuff we just talked about happens in this season of Bad Batch, you can guarantee yourself that we're going to be talking about it here on the show. And also, here on this Fandom Podcast Network, there's a bunch of other shows where people talk about cool fandom stuff. And we're going to take a quick commercial break so that Kevin can tell you about those shows, then come back and talk a little Star Wars news for this week.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blooded Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, cool. Thanks so much, Kevin, for that update. And guys, speaking of the Bad Batch, we got a little update unintentionally about season 2 of the Bad Batch this week when StarWars.com databank, the main flagship website itself, accidentally spoiled a Bad Batch season 2 cameo. And in this case, it is. What is this girl's name? Rio Chu. Help me out, Nathan. Chuchi?
Chuchi. Yeah.
Chuchi, yes. Rio Chuchi has been spotted in a screenshot that is part of Captain Rex's official databank entry there. We look at this screenshot and we see that we have Clone Force 99 hanging out, and it is their current incarnation. So Omega is there with her longer hair, and we have Echo there with his robot arm, and so on and so forth, and Captain Rex. And they're standing there with Senator Chuchi at the far right-hand side of the screenshot. And so this is a bit of a spoiler because we didn't know for sure that she was going to be in this show. And also, it's a spoiler because we know that, she survived the Clone Wars as a former Republic senator. Or maybe even still current Republic senator, because during the adventures of Clone Force 99, that predates the dissolution of the Galactic Senate. I am the Senate hasn't yet actually occurred. At least not literally.
Yeah.
Palpatine said that, but then later he literally becomes the Senate by abolishing them.
The dissolving the council permanently, which I always took to mean, hey, I used Force Lightning to murder all of them. At least all the ones who happen to be there at the time.
Them.
Yeah,
yes,
it's the Romulan version of dissolving the Senate with the Thalaron radiation from Star Trek. Poof.
It's like, what is this? Oh, lightning coming out. Oh, we're dead.
So anyway, Nathan, give us a little spiel about Senator Rio here, and what she did on the Clone Wars, because this is the big news is that she's a character that predated the Bad Batch in Star Wars animation.
Yes. So she showed up in the Clone Wars. At first, she was not a senator, but she was kind of a representative of her planet. She's a Pantoran, and they come from a rather cold area of space, or at least cold planets. We saw her on a moon that orbited Orto Plutonia, which was just basically Hoth.
Yeah,
when you get down to it. But there was a species there called the Talls, which we originally saw in the original Star Wars. There's one in the cantina named Muftak. But it turns out that they're not. They're intelligent. They're sapients and all of that, but they're not particularly advanced. They don't travel off-world or anything like that. And some of the other Pantorans wanted to just wipe them out because this is our moon. We were here first. Actually, they weren't. But as far as they were concerned, we've owned this moon because it orbits our planet. And these inhabitants can just get out. But they don't have any spaceships. Too bad.
Too bad.
So that doesn't work because Anakin comes in and is like, yeah, no, that's not cool. So Rio steps up and takes a leadership role in saying, no, this is their world. We may have the rights to this moon, but that doesn't make it ours. It's theirs. We're leaving. And because of the leadership she displayed there, she was then sent to the Senate for her planet. So presumably she's been in the Senate since then. She did show up in a few other episodes, but in much more minor roles. So we'd see her in the background for things like when the Zillow Beast attacked, that sort of thing. But She didn't play as major of a role from that arc out.
All right.
Now, we played a game of Star Wars Legion yesterday.
Yes.
And that there's a particular scenario in that game where you have a hostage, and the models for the hostages are it's not Newt
Neimoidian.
Gunray,
It's
a
not Newt,
Neimoidian.
a
It's
Neimoidian, yeah.
Rune Hako.
Yeah.
And Rio.
Yeah. So just
So-
yesterday, Darth Vader was trying to capture Rio, and Nathan was
And succeeded.
It did. Indeed.
Every other Imperial in the game died, but Darth Vader succeeded in capturing this one girl. Very Imperial strategy when you think about it.
Yep. My rebels acquitted themselves well and captured Hako.
Not quite sure why Rebels and Imperials were trying to capture these Clone War era characters, but it was still a fun game.
Yes. So, are you guys surprised that that Rio is showing up in Bad Batch, and what do you think she might be doing with Rex and the gang? Derek?
I think that she'll be helping them, right? I mean, they helped her, so she'll help them. So
Yeah. I think she's probably going to be giving them some sort of quote-unquote intel from stuff that's going on in the Senate and the official Imperial government. You know, she's going to be like Rex is going to have found out something from her, and he's going to call the Bad Batch there to meet with her because whatever it is, he doesn't want to risk transmitting it over some sort of comm line.
Yeah, when I saw this spoiler, I was kind of surprised that she's showing back up, but then I thought I really shouldn't be. She is actually fairly popular despite not having that big of a role in the Clone Wars, and it makes sense to have her show back up. It gives Dave Filoni somebody to work with who is a senator, who is definitely a good guy senator, but who isn't Mon Mothma or Bail Organa. So I think she's probably working with them, and she may even name drop them and say, "Oh, I got this intel from Mon Mothma or from Bail Organa," but without having to bring those voice actors in.
Right.
So I think you're spot on with, yeah, she's going to be bringing some intel from the Senate, and she's a good guy.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we got one more news tidbit this episode, and that is for the collectors out there. So, Derek, I know you're a huge Star Wars card game collector. Not so much action figures, but man, if you were, this would be huge news. A horde of more than 300 pristine Star Wars action figures unearthed from the closet of an Illinois collector is now heading to auction in February. The toys are still sealed in their original packaging from the 1970s and 1980s. I don't know if you guys clicked through this, but it is some of the most rare and valuable Star Wars toys in existence, and they're all in almost pristine shape. There is a tweet further down in this article that shows how whoever owned these had multiple copies of almost every figure from the original Kenner line that ended in 1985, which is just, I mean, astonishing that they would have so many of them, all of them mint on card. And we're talking like the most rare of the rare, including what they expect to be the biggest seller at the auction. Luke Skywalker figure from the original 1970s line that has the double telescoping lightsaber, which means the lightsaber slides out of the figure's arm, and then this one has a teeny tiny little extra part that extends out even further to make it the full length of the lightsaber blade. The later versions of this type of figure, which I had one from Return of the Jedi, which was the Luke with the green lightsaber that slides out of his arm, would only have one level of lightsaber blade instead of the two levels. And they are expecting this double telescoping lightsaber Luke Skywalker from A New Hope to go for close to $20,000. That's almost more money than I paid for my current car. It is way more money than I paid for my first car, which is just astonishing to me. But yeah, Derek, looking through this, do you see any toys here that you're just like, I can't believe they have one of those for sale?
Well, I mean, the fact that the guy kept it mint in box, right? So I'm sure Skywalker Ranch is going to be all over some of this stuff,
I hope so.
and some of the other things. Maybe some of it could be strictly donated to like the Smithsonian Museum type deal, right? I mean, because you got to think the way Star Wars is a global phenomenon. The toys like this in pristine condition, because I mean, the fact that, especially if he was doing it correctly, which it sounds like he was, where you have to keep it where it's not in light, not in a damp place, right? It's got to be dry because that cardboard. I mean, when you're talking, 45-year-old stuff at this point,
Yeah, yeah.
then yeah. So it dust everywhere with cardboard. So if it's in good condition, then it's good stuff. But I'm just curious as to why he's cashing it in now. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I believe that the collector in question has passed away, and his family
Okay.
found all this in his closet. And they're like, "This might be worth some money." Little did they know.
This might be worth a little bit of money.
Yeah, probably
Yeah, I
hundreds
just-
of thousands of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just said it. Yeah, I wasn't sure if he had passed away or not. So
I think that's right. I don't know the precise storyline,
yeah,
but
I mean, it
basically
makes
they-
sense, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I'm cashing in because I'm sure it's worth several millions of dollars. So
Yeah.
you might as well get it in and take it and actually use it for something else. Because, and like I said, yeah, if the family's not going to use, I mean, we see this all the time, even on Facebook, right? With the card groups that we belong to, people are like, yeah, my so and so family member passed away, that, and I buried these cards, help me, right? Or I know a
Yeah.
little bit about it, right? Or whatever. So and in today's market, I mean, that stuff's very valuable. So
Yeah, they even have the original Boba Fett figure that you could only get by mailing away, blah blah blah, and it's still on the card. It's a Boba Fett that's on a Star Wars card back instead of an Empire or Return of the Jedi card back, which makes it exceedingly rare. And this is not the Boba Fett that I had. I had the one from Empire, but he's definitely the same prototype from Kenner. Well, based on the same prototype from Kenner. Gorgeous figures, and I can't believe that the cards are all in really good shape too. I mean, it's amazing.
yeah, that's what I said, for the fact that he kept them somewhere where they were mint free, basically. So that's cool.
Okay. I read through the article, and it turns out that no, the collector did not die.
Oh,
They just didn't know what they had.
wow.
The toys were acquired by the Chicago collector, primarily of antique coin-operated machines, who purchased multiples of each figure for his children, one for them to play with, and the other to stockpile. And then basically, since he was into antique stuff anyway, he was talking with the CEO of Morphe Auctions, Tom Tollworthy, and basically just kind of casually mentioned, "Hey, I've got some Star Wars figures. Is that something y'all would be interested in selling for me? I kind of don't need them anymore." And Tollworthy was like, "Yeah, I mean, we do that." Yeah, thinking these are probably going to be knickknacks, and then when they received them, realized, oh no,
We got our work cut out for us.
these are not knickknacks. These are very, very valuable. So yeah, it was just a matter of the collector not realizing that these particular items were
Worth money. It's like, Star Wars toys are worth money? Like, yes.
Well, he obviously was an older gentleman, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he bought these like when they were. Yeah, he didn't collect these later on once they had become collectibles. He bought these as toys and just thought, yeah, I'll buy extras.
Yeah, and then further down the article, now I'm skimming it, as Nathan's pointed out, good information here. One of the reviewers noted that only a few of the boxes had price stickers on them, which meant that the collector placed special orders for most of the toys. So they were like direct off the truck to him. They didn't go hang on the store shelf at some point.
yeah, you can see the one they show of the star Luke Skywalker doesn't have the punch tag in it.
Yeah,
Where you'd hang it. So those are worth more valuable. So
wow.
Because it's kind of a funny story with that. So I don't know if you guys I don't know if they ever did it in your local area, Scott. And Nathan, you might recall this because you're just a little bit younger than me. But PBS used to do once a year, or for 2 weeks, would do their auction for the local city, right? They would have, or wherever the PBS was aired, right, for the localization portion of it. So in Cleveland, they used to do a 2-week auction. So people would donate stuff and let them, and it was a lot of like antique stuff, right? And they would donate things to PBS to basically be able to auction. And back then you had to phone in and you would say they had like a 7-digit item number to the item, and you would say so and so, because they would have these auction boards, and the board would be whatever, and it'd have like 15 items on it in chalk, right? And you would do it, and they would go back to the board every so often, and you could see who put the name price on it and all that stuff, or just the price of it. So my dad put a bid in for a C3PO one, because back then C3PO and R2D2 weren't as highly sought after, right? Because when they produced them, they didn't think the droids would be that much of a character, right? They just figured they were side characters, so they were more limited run. Well, this person had donated a C3PO, the original 1977 Kenner action figure, without the punch card in it. So it was mint in that, and it was in a actual like plastic bag, right? Because they just had it, right? So they donated it. So my dad ended up winning it. Back then, I mean, this was mid 90s, late 90s, I think, because I was just around in high school. It was like one of the last few years they didn't do it much longer after that. But he won it for like $350. So then you would actually have to drive to the location. It was like in the middle between Akron, Canton, and Cleveland, where they had their television studio set up. So we had to drive there. We waited hours in line because you had so many hundreds of people going in picking up their items, and we got it. Well, when we got it, it was a C3PO, but it was in a now plastic hard case, and it had the punch in it. So somebody there saw that and went and purchased one, probably for $60 or $80, and then
swapped it out. Yeah.
So my dad rejected it because he's like, no, that's not what I paid for. Because he's like, I paid the $350. I was going to pay the $350. So I would have had that, and could have actually been worth something nowadays. But yeah, so not that the other one probably isn't still worth nowadays, but not worth the money we would have paid for.
Well, and it certainly wasn't what your dad had paid for.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would certainly love to buy one of the Chewbacca's, but not if it's going to be anywhere close to the price of that Luke Skywalker.
Probably be about $5,000 to $10,000, maybe even more, right? If it's that pristine. So,
I
was going to see if I could find.
I love Chewie, but no.
Here's a Chewie. Well, I mean, opening bid is not nearly as high as what Derek said. Although, note opening bid. Opening bid, Nathan, is a mere $400.
That's still a no.
Although the estimate on it is anywhere from $800 to $1,600 for this particular Chewbacca. Although this is Chewbacca 12C, so that must mean there's more than one Chewie in this auction.
Well, Scott, just yesterday we were playing Star Wars Legion.
Yes.
Speaking of this type of figure, and we had a guy come up behind us. We had several people ask what we were doing because that game
we
doesn't
got all
get played.
kinds of attention at the game store yesterday because it was mostly card games, and then us with like a full mat and Imperial Forest and whatnot.
Yeah, that game doesn't get played all that often at the store that we were at. So yeah, tons of people were asking what we were doing, and I'm so proud. Somebody came up and was like, "Oh, you've got Star Wars stuff. Oh, I see they come pre-painted." I'm like, "Oh, my paint jobs are so good." He thinks that they're very official.
I said he's new to minis.
Yeah,
yeah, that too. But Scott mentioned the Darth Vader captured Ryu. My Darth Vader was painted as the prototype Darth Vader.
So great, rainbow Darth Vader.
Yeah, he's got all different colors for each arm and the lightsaber in the head.
He's just like C3PO.
Yeah, you probably didn't recognize me because of my red arm. Good times. All right. Well, if you guys want some cool Star Wars related collectibles, please check out our T Public store. But also, let's find out what Star Wars t-shirts we're wearing this week. I'm going to go first because I'm bucking the trend and kind of off schedule. For Christmas this year, I did get a new Star Wars shirt, and it is a Star Wars Christmas shirt. So even though this is being recorded on January the what is this?
8th.
8th? Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm wearing the Christmas shirt because it's so cute.
Hey,
It's
according
not-
to church, it's the last day, right?
That's right.
The last
Yes,
week,
12
so
days of Christmas or something
yeah.
along those
Thought
lines.
that was the other. Yeah, never mind.
Anyway, I've got Grogu on my shirt, and he is holding a Christmas present that's as big as he is. So his cute little baby Yoda ears are sticking out, and it says, "This is the way to the gifts." So he is all about the presents, and he's, because he's a kid, he wants to open presents at Christmas, and so he is all, "This is the way to the gifts," and he's looking so cute with his package in front of him. So I'll be putting this away after tonight's recording until next Christmas, but I wanted to get one use out of it.
Well, you got to get it in July.
Oh yeah, Christmas in July.
Christmas in July.
Yeah.
Or
Derek,
whenever the premiere of Grogu, and you just feel like you need, because I mean, Mando's going to be what, 8 or 12 episodes.
oh yeah, that's true. I can wear it for Mando season 3. All right, Derek, what shirt do you have on for this episode?
I wore it once before because we kept getting delays of Bad Batch season 2. So I was excited because I get to wear it back in, I don't know, what do we predict? August of 2022.
We were thinking August of 22. Yeah, we were way
I don't know what you're talking about. It came out right on time.
It's like a wizard, huh?
It-
It arrives
in-
precisely when it means, to.
It came out in January.
Oh, boom! It's the Chibi Bad Batch T-shirt with the red Bad Batch logo on a
from
black.
my turtle turtle shirt collection that I have. So I do own a Bad Batch because it was cool. So
Yeah,
Very
awesome.
nice.
Nathan, what do you got on Star Wars
Well,
T-shirt? Wise?
You talked about getting your gift there. I got a Star Wars gift too. I got the Razor Crest Lego set, not the big, super expensive one, the Micro Machines version.
Hey,
I-
but it looks cool.
It even
where Mando's riding the whole ship.
yeah, it even shoots little studs. Whee! And now I'll
you'll
have to
never
go
find
find
that
that
again.
stud. But in honor of the Bad Batch, I'm wearing my Rex T-shirt, the one with the blue patch right here, and the camera's mirrored, and the marks, the tally marks
tally
for
marks,
each
yeah.
Clanka he's killed. So we know that Rex is going to show up in this season. So I'm excited to see the episode or episodes that he appears in. And this shirt is for him.
Awesome. Oh, Mita also got me another Star Wars gift this week that's for my new car, which I'm going to do a whole segment about my car on the podcast someday in the future because it's decked out in Stormtrooper gear and it's an electric Chevy Bolt. So awesome. Best car I've ever had. But instead of fuzzy dice for the rearview mirror, she got me some Han Solo gold dice. So I'm going to be having those hanging up on the rearview mirror as soon as I can figure out a way to secure them. To give my nod to the Millennium Falcon, even though it's decked out in Stormtrooper paraphernalia. I got a great story about defending my choice of Stormtrooper paraphernalia on Reddit, which I'll share whenever I get time to talk about how great my car is. And very Star Warsy and almost science fiction-y, but that's a story for another time. But if you guys want your own cool What a Piece of Junk t-shirt or mouse pad or a coffee mug or any of that kind of stuff, just head over to tpublic.com and check out the Fandom Podcast Network store on TeePublic. Nathan, please let folks know where they can find the show out there on the internet.
Well, there are tons of places that you can find the show. You can find us on fpnet.podbean.com. You can find us on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, YouTube, pretty much anywhere that you stream podcasts, you can find us. You can also find us on Facebook, the What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast Facebook page, or you can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com or contact us on Twitter at whatwars. If you're interested in contacting the Fandom Podcast Network itself, you can also contact that on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network. And if you do find us on Apple Podcasts or really anywhere you find us, we would love for you to leave us a review. We love the 5-star reviews, but we'd like you to leave whatever review you feel would be best. And Derek, why do we want those reviews?
Well, personally, I like sitting in my cozy home. If we don't have these reviews and we have to go out there and actually do something to, keep paying for this coaxium, we're gonna have to start going on these mini MacGuffin side quests. Because Admiral Kyle is pretty adamant that we keep up on our payments on this, Drunken Gungan, which is still smelling like wet Wookiee fur, but that's all right.
Yeah, I noticed he
So,
started
again,
charging us a cleaning fee.
Yes. So if you like the show, please leave 5-star reviews on whatever platform you're listening to us. So that way we can make sure we're here giving you such great reviews and content. Unlike if we have to go out there and start doing giant crab fighting of whatever. And I mean, I know, Nathan's not going to enjoy it, but I enjoy seafood. So I'm okay with that. But, I'm sure if we're on a sunny beach, we might not come back then.
Yeah. Totally. All right, great. Well, we want to thank you all so much for joining us on this episode and for helping us make our way into our second century worth of episodes, as we're here at 102 in the year of our Lord 2023. Please hit us up on social media between shows. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like, anything we can do to make the show better and more interesting for you, or the kinds of things that you want to see us cover. And please always remember to respect each other and respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.